I'm very happy that you are joining the faculty here of the ULab and that you will be helping us to explore, to deeper understand the whole space of prototyping, and also helping us as we move from idea to action to coach kind of many of the ongoing projects through this process over the next week or two. So we could start with a little bit kind of your journey, where you came from, where your folks came from, and then your journey that brought you into this line of work that you're engaged in now.
So I grew up in the Midwest, and that was sort of the beginning of the story. I didn't have Legos like we just saw. Those would have been great, but with my immigrant grad student parents, it was more dropping off little bits of things that, a leftover container from a new box of batteries, things like that. And when I was building things to support my play, like I played with dolls, I'm a girl, but when I wanted to build something, I took all those pieces and that became a barn, or it became whatever it was that I needed. And just like the kids we just heard about, it was just really in the moment, getting really rapid feedback. Either it held up my horses or it didn't, but that was kind of what day-to-day play was like.
So it was your father kind of dropping off these objects that provided you with the environment for that level of realizing your own creativity, right? Early on.
That's right. That's right. He was a model airplane maker himself when he was a kid, and really kind of helped me inherit that sort of just make it play kind of attitude.
Tell us who IDEO is. So, from all our participants, many may have heard, but some may have not. So,
sure. IDEO is a global design and innovation firm. It has offices on most continents, each of which is sort of design studio of somewhere between 50 to, at the largest, 250 people. And they design everything from what they started designing when I was there earlier on, tangible things like the first commercialized Apple mouse was one of their designs, anything from toothbrushes to medical devices, but also increasingly less tangible things like services, environments, answering questions like how might we get clean water into the developing world, despite all of the sort of not only logistical but social challenges that are there, is a kind of question that IDEO has been asked more recently.
So you stayed on at IDEO for 13 years. That's quite a long period. What made you stay so long, and what was it that prompted you to move on in the end?
IDEO was growing amazingly during those years, and so the work was constantly changing, and you were constantly pushing the edge of what could be done from a design perspective. At the pull of our clients, and that was always very exciting. And I ultimately left because I realized that seeing that transformation in people, what was sort of my side job at IDEO, was actually what I was most passionate about. What working in design and in design ways of working unleashed in people.
What is it that you learned that helps others to connect with these other ways of operating in terms of seeing, in terms of creativity, and in terms of making? It's
some combination of unlocking the individual potential and sort of a collective one, and a culture around the individual and how their creativity comes together. So first, what are the most essential experiences that an individual can have that help them tap into those things? And I think that you ought to have spent even more time thinking about what some of those are. And so that's one of the places that Theory U and design thinking, I think, complement each other so well, is because design thinking has focused more on a lot of what's happening to the project and less about what's happening to the person. And so I've been trying to create some key experience, understand what some key experiences are. So what are some of the most important questions that they can ask themselves to tap into first that insight about the world? What's going on around me? What's connected to everything else? Where does things feel most stuck? What are some of the questions that they can ask themselves as they're walking around? Not necessarily the 101 design methods or the method deck, but what are ways that they can tap in through those questions, through verbal, visual, physical means. IDEO likes to talk about looking, asking, and trying. Like, very simply, how do you just, as you would say, use your hands, head, heart to actually experience the world in new ways and come to that insight? How do you, again, verbally, visually, physically explore what a new future might be? Tap into your intuition. Like, just what's a metaphor for the change you need to see? What's a picture that symbolizes the change that you need to see? So very simple but really powerful things like that, and so on. Again, when we're imagining, what are ways that we can tap in and prototyping into sort of all parts of us, but very, very simple and powerful at the same time.
Talk a little bit about the current stage of your work. So, and what it was that prompted you, to move on in your own journey, and what it is that you try to do right now, and what excites you most about your current way, your current line of work, and maybe also give us an example for that.
Sure. So my current line of work is really pursuing what we were just talking about. I presently work in a couple of different ways. I work through my own organization that's called I2I Experience, and that's about I2I both reflects this here, is that it's very much about people connecting in new ways that enable new futures to happen, but also going from individual to innovator and going from insights to ideas to actual implementation. So that's kind of the spirit of what I hope to empower people to do. And so I'm in that work most typically coaching people to do this kind of work in their organizations, whatever it is they're trying to accomplish, whatever challenges they're trying to tackle, to do it sort of through this kind of designer's way of being and working, and always, for myself, constantly evolving and prototyping ways of helping them do that. And they don't have years to study design. They just need, through their work, to do it in ways that help them understand and experience new ways of working, and very intuitively, intrinsically continue to work in those new ways and build sort of naturally build whole new cultures of working in organizations that enable them to keep doing that.
Given the many years of prototyping experiences you have been living through and working through, if you reflect on your own experience and would boil it down to 2 or 3 key learning experiences, what is it that you would tell to us, kind of to the ULab participants, that might be really helpful as we now this week launch into this phase of moving from a vague idea, or if even just a feeling, an ambiguous feeling about a possibility that I could grab, to something that really allows us to learn by doing?
The first thing would really grow out of what you were talking about in terms of listening to the universe. One of I think the things that people forget almost the most about prototyping is that in order to listen, you have to ask, not tell. And so the most important thing about a prototype isn't even the prototype, it's the question that you're asking with that prototype. And I even have to remind myself to stop sometimes, briefly, and ask, what are the questions that I'm trying to ask with this? Either about the potential of the idea or the potential problems with the idea. And so pausing to do that and being intentional. I love how you write in your book, the actionless minds and mindless action. So that's a little bit of mindfulness, and then kind of moving forward with just enough action to answer those questions. So what's the quickest way to get a sense of teasing out the potential? Like if I think that my idea is going to encourage people to act in a different way or whatever, what's a small way of testing that and seeing if people are engaged and if people do change in some small way? For example, I'm working right now with a college that's trying to understand its involvement in the lower school years, and we're envisioning all kinds of bigger programs, but we just tried hosting one get-together with people from the lower grades, and just seeing, just sharing anything that we had was so valuable to them, and sharing with each other was so valuable to them that we realized we can do so much with so little if we want to, and that really helped people understand both the potential and actually that some of the problems, as people usually find with prototyping, oftentimes the problems are not the ones that you think they're going to be, and they're less insurmountable than you think that they're going to be, especially if you start prototyping early.
I heard you actually describing more than one here, right? So it's kind of the clarifying the question, it's kind of the mindfulness, it's really the moving into the practical exploration, doing something around that. What else? Maybe, as the rest of us in our community is moving into that now, what else should we be mindful of?
I think going back to the, my father handing me, pieces of whatever, I think resourcefulness and realizing that you need to be answering, sort of addressing real questions, but you don't have to use the real stuff. Let's say, your idea is, a new space that you want to create, or an app, or even a new way of getting together, or whatever it is, it doesn't matter. You can always, at the beginning, to answer these questions, try to use, as artists would call, found objects as much as possible. Build on what's there. What can you do with, a Skype conversation instead of a new app? Just to sort of learn what the potential is. If I want to create, something that enables people to communicate in new ways, how can I push the current platforms really quickly in some of the directions that I'm going, in order to just better understand what I need to do when I sit down to really create something.
You mentioned the power of asking good questions for the prototyping. How do you do that?
I think that it really comes down to the listening to the voices that you talk about, the voice of fear, judgment, cynicism. Where do you hear your own popping up? Where do you imagine or actually hear those arising from other people? And cutting straight to the heart of those. How do you either explore the challenge that's being articulated in all of those, that people are fearful of or are skeptical about? Or how do you actually explore the potential of the idea that might overcome, those fears or those judgments?
What is it that you're most excited about joining the ULab? And so how do you see your own role unfolding kind of as we move into the actual prototyping work this week?
There's a couple of things I'm particularly excited about. One is this opportunity to really join the design world and the U world, and I think they complement each other really, really well. So bringing some of the tangible tools from the design world and the ability to tap much more deeply and methods of doing that from the U world. So bringing those together is really exciting. And as the live course goes on, to really be able to respond to the challenges that people are working on, the challenges that they're having, and evolve ways of supporting those that we can continue to use, that will empower many other people to work in these ways.
You mentioned design thinking and theory U. So what do you see as what's similar and what's different, if any?
Well, I think that both of them, you more explicitly and design thinking maybe more implicitly, are really trying to tap into the maximum sort of human potential for insight, for creativity, for action, our greatest sort of collective creativity. And design thinking has done that traditionally in a more sort of product-oriented environment, but that's been changing quite a bit, and it's sort of growing to encompass sort of the much wider set of things that Theory U people have been working on, and on the one hand, design thinking has been getting larger and larger compendiums of design methods, but at the same time, we're trying to understand kind of what the real essence of the designer's sort of spirit and creativity is. And Theory U and all the work that you did leading up to it was really cutting straight to the heart of that, and what, as I understand it, where that sort of intuition grows from. And so that is a really compelling connection for us, because designers haven't really, we've sort of externalized more of the tools that we use to collaborate and evolve ideas, but less about what's really happening to the person as these ideas come to them.
Well, that's certainly something I have also experienced in my own life, and we chatted about that earlier today. That really at the core, of Theory U and of the core of design really is this question of the deeper level of creativity. So you could say like Theory U really is linking systems thinking and leadership and creativity from the viewpoint of a deeper dimension of human creativity, and it's about sensing and actualizing that deeper dimension is really at the core, and therefore obviously very closely connected. And what I love about design thinking is really all the practical methods and tools, in particular for the right-hand side of the U, kind of which in the U methodology is still, like everything, is like work in progress. Like everything, of course, is work in progress, but particularly there, I think there's a lot of helpful connection that's happening, and you are actually playing a big role in that.
So exciting.
So, closing question from my end: as I now launch into my own prototyping activity, what is it that I do first?
To decide what the most important questions are to tackle in order to start to move your idea forward. Questions about the potential, questions about the problems of the idea. What are those most important questions, and what is the quickest, most agile way to experiment with those questions and start to get to some answers?
Thank you very much.
It's been a pleasure.